Mandy Yarkich from Creative Matters, and you're listening to Creative Matters on Air, where I have conversations with new and established artists from around New Zealand. I love to listen to artists' stories and learn about their creative process, and maybe you do too, which is why I've made this podcast, to inspire, inform and educate. I hope you can take away something positive and encouraging from each of these amazing stories to help you on your own creative journey. Hi, and welcome to Creative Matters, episode 27. Today we are talking to Judith Milner. Judith is a portrait and figurative painter living in Auckland, New Zealand. After studying law, psychology and art history at the University of Auckland, Judith worked as a commercial lawyer for 13 years before reconnecting with her love of painting, while taking a break to focus on caring for her two young children. Judith has always been drawn to the quiet contemplation of portraiture, the opportunity to read a face, to reflect on the sitter's interior, and through the process of painting to try to capture something of their essential character, something more than a superficial likeness. She seeks to combine a naturalistic, descriptive approach with a more painterly and expressive style. Judith's figurative paintings are inspired by nostalgia for old informal photographs, far removed from today's highly doctored digital images that are immediately and continually available. Judith tells us a very fascinating story of her creative journey, and she shares insights into the ways she explores stories of the past, relationships, personalities, connections, equality, and inclusion through her beautiful paintings. Hello, Judith Milner. Welcome to Creative Matters.
Hi, Mandy.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Oh, good. It's great to see you, even though we have a computer between us.
Getting used to this here and there.
Yeah. It's not an easy time, really, is it? So, Judith, it would be really nice for you, if you don't mind, just to go back to your childhood and tell us where you were born and if you're an arty child and, something about your family.
Sure. So I was born here in Auckland and grew up on the North Shore, and I was a very arty child. I spent a huge amount of time sort of drawing and making things, and I used to love making paper dolls and make little cardboard furniture for my dollhouse and things like that. My mum had a studio in the garden with a kiln. She made porcelain dolls. So I used to spend a lot of time out there in painting ceramics and getting her to fire things in her kiln for me, which I loved doing. And my dad wasn't artistic, but he's very interested in art. So whenever there was a big exhibition on at the gallery, we would all go and see that. And I can still remember some of the exhibitions when the Impressionists came from France and things like that, going to see those. And if we went on road trips, we'd always be pulling over to look at different historic buildings and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think I had quite a creative sort of upbringing.
That's great. And it's interesting that your mum was into her, ceramics and firing and you never actually ended up following that path, did you?
No. I did always enjoy that kind of thing, but yeah, I guess it's picking up a paintbrush is a little bit easier. You don't need all that equipment.
Yeah. But she obviously sort of ignited something in your creative brain.
Yeah,
which is great. And so moving into high school, did you do all the art subjects and study art?
Yes, so I took art and art history at high school, and I had a really good teacher in fourth form art who she sort of taught us all the basics of painting and drawing and shading and colour theories and things like that, and I remember really enjoying that. And then she was my art history teacher later as well, and I loved art history. I just found it so amazing how these artists had used art to tell stories and for political propaganda and always different movements throughout art, and it really just gave me a new way of looking at art and understanding it, and that was quite an awakening for me, I think. Just that was one of my favourite subjects. So yeah.
And then what other subjects were you into at that time? Because I know that you ended up becoming a lawyer, so obviously you were interested in other things at school.
Yeah, I did English and history and classical studies, and I think that was it, art and art history by the time I got to the end of school. But I was quite academic as well. So I guess that's where I kind of ended up going in a slightly different direction. My family weren't too keen. They were supportive of me doing art, but they just thought it should be a hobby, and they weren't really keen on me going that way when it came to tertiary study. I think they really worried that it wouldn't be a job, and I come from quite a traditional family where it's important to have a reliable job,
professional
career,
and
that sort of thing.
And it's very common, isn't it? I mean, so many of our guests have had that same sort of feeling from their parents.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's different now with younger parents or the next generation coming through. I'm not sure if there's a different attitude. Hopefully there is.
Yeah, I think people are encouraged more to just follow what they love doing and what they're good at. Perhaps these days it's hard to know, isn't it?
I'd like to think so. Yeah, I think people value creativity, I think, more as something that you can devote your life to, I guess. But I still think there could be some parents who just still have that little worry in the back of their minds that it might not be a sort of financially viable career for their kids.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah. So tell us about how you got to university or what happened after high school.
Yeah, so I ended up studying law, and I think I was quite naive to what being a lawyer really was, to be honest, but I could continue doing all my art subjects while I was at university. So I did that. I kept up the art history and the history, and I did psychology as well. So I did a conjoint law and arts degree. And I loved university, and I did a little bit of painting while I was at university, do the odd evening course or something with a friend, but I didn't have a lot of time, so that kind of gradually went by the wayside. And then I came out of university and I went straight into a big law firm on a graduate program. And then at that time, I didn't paint really for quite a long time because, work was quite intense and long hours. And then from there, I went off travelling and was living in flat shares and things where you just don't really have the space to do that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how you sort of end up, having to kind of accommodate whatever you're doing at the time, and that can influence the art that you're making.
Yeah.
So how long were you a lawyer?
About 13 years all up. So I worked here in New Zealand, and then I went to the UK and worked there. And then I went to Australia as well for a couple of years. And then 7 years ago now, we had my daughter. So I took some time out then and, wanted to be at home with her. And then I did a little bit of work when she was 1. I went back, did some part-time work. But I didn't really feel ready to launch myself back into it because we knew we wanted more children. One more. And then I haven't gone back since then. So I've been out of it now for 7 years, really.
Wow. And are you pining for it? I mean, what kind of law work were you actually doing?
I was a corporate sort of commercial lawyer. And No, I'm not pining for it. I don't think I'll go back. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a sort of gradual realization. I thought that I would initially. And then I don't think I can't see myself going back to it now.
And is that because you have your children as your new focus, or is it your art practice?
I think it's my art practice, really. Yeah, because I definitely want something for myself outside of just the children. And I think, art's kind of come to fill that space, I guess. Yeah, It's gradually over the last few years, really.
Yeah, that's so great. And I think a lot of people, I mean, that's when I started painting. It was when my children were babies, and, when they went to bed, that was my time to get creative, which I really felt I needed.
Yeah.
So how do you actually work your way around your week and your kids?
Yeah, so my youngest isn't at school yet, but she does go to a creche 3 days a week, just school hours, really. And so those are my painting days. And one of those days I go to Brown School of Art, and I have been doing their year-long classes, which has been really great. And then, I try and dedicate another day to painting of my 3 days. And then the third day usually kind of gets used up with admin and dentist appointments and all that kind of stuff. But so I do have a bit of time, when she's at kindy, and she'll be starting school mid next year. So then I should get quite a bit more time, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and you'll see that as your full-time job.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
Yeah,
well done for bringing out the paintbrushes again.
Yeah. No, I had started painting when I was in Melbourne, actually, and that's when I started the portraiture. So that was before my daughter was born, and I'd been doing that class and I just loved it. And so I knew that once the children were old enough to be left with a grandparent or something like that, I really wanted to get back into it.
That's so good. Wow, that's great. And we'll talk about the Brown School of Art, a little bit later and what you're doing there. But would you like to just start by telling us about your practice as a whole? And then we'll sort of look at the different elements of it and talk through that a little bit. So, how would you describe your practice?
So I have the two kind of strands running, I guess, so the portraiture side of things. And even within that, I guess I have kind of portraits that I do on commission for people. And then I also like to have my own sort of more self-directed work within that. And then more recently, I've started doing the figurative paintings, which I often use old photos and things as resources. So
do you use oils or acrylic?
Yeah, I use oils. Yeah, I love oil paint. I only ever used acrylics at high school and things, but then when I discovered oil paints, I love the blendability, and I love the fact they stay wet and you can keep working into them. Yeah,
I think most people who are oil painters absolutely love oils. I would never go back to acrylic.
Yeah, well, I hear about these new acrylic paints that are more similar, and it would be nice to try them, but I've got my materials now, so
and you work on canvas or board?
I work on canvas sometimes, or I use quite a lot of linen boards because I really like the linen surface is just a bit finer than the canvas and less toothy, and I really like that. So you can get stretched linen or the linen boards, and for smaller works I find the boards are really good. And they're easier to frame as well, for people.
It's beautiful working on linen, isn't it?
It is.
Even acrylic on linen. What's that, sorry?
I love the natural linen colour, so sometimes I leave areas unpainted, and it's this beautiful sort of earthy grey, and I like to leave areas showing.
Yeah. And it's got a lovely texture on it, hasn't it? As you say, not as defined as canvas, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, let's talk about your practice in sort of two parts, really. We'll start with the portraiture.
Mm-hmm.
So, how did you get into that? Were you actually doing that at high school, that kind of thing, or when did you start painting faces?
Yeah, so at high school, we always really did still life, and I can remember wanting to paint people. I always loved Rita Angus's self-portraits and things like that, and most of the art that I liked was of people. So then when I was in Australia, I found a portraiture class with an amazing teacher called Andrew Forsyth, and I used to go along in the evenings, and we'd have models sit for us, and we'd paint from life, and we'd have a couple of hours once a week, over a couple of weeks to finish a painting, and I just loved it. I just was completely kind of hooked, and then obviously having a model sit for you is not as easy as using a photograph and things. So I sort of gradually moved over to working from photographs, which I find it easier. It's easier to get a likeness, I think, than working from, well, it depends how much time you have, but it can be less pressure, I think, working from a photograph. Yeah.
I really don't know how you do it. I just have so much admiration for portrait artists who can capture, expression in the way that you do. I mean, your portraits are so beautiful, and they're the kind of portraits that sort of draw you in, and there's something that wants you to keep looking at them. They're just, I think it is the expression, and that sort of, it's almost like the face is really telling a story, and you want to know more kind of thing. There's something about them. Often I just pass portraits by, it doesn't necessarily draw me in, but there's something about your work that does that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. How do you actually, how do you approach it? I mean, do you have a person who if you're doing so maybe if we talk about, first of all, your portraits you do which aren't commissions.
Yeah.
And how you approach that. So if you could sort of talk through your process, that would be interesting.
So last year, actually, for our end of year show at Brown School, I did a series of 9 portraits of inspirational New Zealand women. And I guess the kind of inspiration behind that was that I feel that the media and society tend to value women, for the way we look, and we're constantly bombarded with images of beautiful women. And I wanted to celebrate women for what they'd achieved, and so I chose women who'd achieved great things either professionally or through their activism and service, and so for different reasons. And then I approached those people and asked permission to paint their portrait because, technically, I suppose you don't really need it. It would have felt a bit strange. And that was amazing, actually. Like, I reached out to people that I didn't know, and some of them were quite high profile, and they were all really interested in my project and really supportive. Nobody said no. And I asked them all to send me a photograph or a selection of photographs, and I sort of gave them certain, I guess, not requirements, but told them the type of
guidelines
work. Yeah. And then that's sort of, I guess, how that project came about.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how did you do a lot of research to find the kind of woman that you wanted to portray, or?
I did, and once I had chosen the woman, I would research them as well and try and find out as much as I could about them. Because I think when you have someone sit for you, you obviously have that opportunity to get to know them and talk to them. But if you're working from a photograph, it's a bit different. And I do want my portraits to convey something more than just a physical likeness. I'm not a realist painter. Representational, but I'm not kind of aiming for realism. And I wanted something of their personality to come through in my painting. So I felt like by doing the research and things, hopefully that would help with that.
And you didn't actually meet them, you just
some of them I met, but not all of them. Yeah. I spoke to people on the phone and things like that, which was
yeah, and that would have been interesting in itself, just meeting or talking to these amazing women.
Definitely, yeah.
Who'd achieved so many things.
Yeah.
And you had 9. It wasn't a series of 9.
It was a series of 9, yes. So the reason I chose the 9 was that I did them in a square format, and I was sort of referencing, I guess, Instagram, and then I arranged them in a grid, again, like the Instagram grid, because I feel like Instagram is so curated and filtered, and I guess I was just trying to make a bit of a counter to that. Like, here are these women that have done these amazing things, and we should be honouring women for what they do and not for how they look. And I guess that's kind of why I chose that format. Yeah.
So good. And it's, it's an important discussion to be having.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with that series, did you have a colour palette in mind, or were you using colour to represent something about the people?
I chose the colours and the backgrounds and things to represent, something about the person. And, it did have to work with the skin tones and the other colours in the painting. But, I tried to make that kind of symbolic in some way, I guess, yeah.
And I guess there'd be quite a lot of symbols in those portraits, probably in all the portraits, what they're wearing, if they've got any jewellery or the way their hair is, all of those symbols are kind of adding to the character, I guess, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there is that, you can tell quite a lot about a person from how they look, oddly.
Yeah.
Yeah, how they present themselves.
Yeah, how they put themselves together.
Exactly,
that kind of thing. Yeah. And they're really beautiful portraits. They look great. So what's happening with those portraits, Judith?
So I had an exhibition of those, and some people bought their portraits and some, didn't, but that wasn't really the point. It was more, just I wanted people to stop and look at them and think about that and to celebrate those women, so.
That's so good.
And one day I'd love to turn it into a book. That would be not just those, but create, a collection of contemporary New Zealand women, and have a book with the portraits and then the stories of those women. I think such amazing stories.
Yeah, that'd be so good. Yeah, that would be a beautiful book. Yeah. And did you had your own exhibition, and that was part of the show, was it, or was it a show especially for those portraits?
So there was a bit of overlap. So I did. I had my own show at Brown School. It was that end of year show with the other people in my class, and that was my sort of contribution. And then I also, separate to that, I had a commission from the Women's Fund to paint 6 of the kind of key donors to that organisation and supporters, because they were having an event to celebrate the recipients of their grants. And so they asked me to do the portraits for the venue, and they were displayed at the venue on the night of the event. And so there was some overlap between some of the women that I used some of the portraits in my end of year show, and some of those women were associated with the Women's Fund.
Oh, right. That's so good. Yeah. And how did they discover you? Was that through the original work that you made?
No, it was the person that was doing their event and kind of PR knew me, and she thought it would be a great kind of synergy because she knew about the work I was doing. And so, it sort of came about that way.
That's really beautiful. That's so nice that you could kind of extend what you'd already come up with and take it to another forum, I guess, another platform.
Yeah, yeah.
But still with the same sort of ideas behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So there was that kind of portrait making, and then um, you obviously have commissions where people come to you and ask you to make a painting. So
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, so it started out initially, it would be sort of friends or friends of friends would come and say, oh, I'd like a portrait of my father or my child. And but then, it's sort of taken off quite a bit, and I'm quite busy with portrait commissions at the moment, which is great. So what normally happens is we'll have a conversation, and I'll try and understand the vision of what they want, and we'll then sort of talk about selecting a photo and what elements are there any other elements that they might want to include in the portrait, and the kind of, I guess, mood they want to get across. And we'll sort of discuss it, and there's usually quite a few things to decide on. And, things like the composition, whether they just want head and shoulders or they want a bit more, or, what size they want, and that sort of thing. So we'll usually work all that out together. And sometimes I'll do a sketch for them just so they can make sure that they're happy with what's included. And then I'll go away and paint that and send them a digital photo to sort of make sure they're happy with everything. And generally people are really pleased with how it's turned out once I've had to make a few changes, only really because the photo wasn't quite so they'd chosen a photo that perhaps didn't quite represent the person. So I said, oh, can you make the chin a bit broader? It's right. It's how the photo looks, but actually their chin's not quite like that. But those things were minor. That was easy to do. So, so that's kind of how that process works, really.
That's really cool. And that must, again, be nice, just making quite a deep connection with a family or a person, and understanding the reasons why they are wanting this portrait and that kind of thing, and the story of the person.
It feels really special because sometimes, it's a family member that's passed, and so, it's like a really, special memento or heirloom for the person that's commissioning it, or sometimes they want to capture a stage of their child's development. And so I love doing that because I just feel like it's such a lovely thing to be able to do for people.
It's quite an honour, isn't it?
It is an honour, and it does feel like quite a responsibility sometimes.
I can imagine.
I did a few kind of back-to-back recently, and then I was quite relieved to take a break and paint something else because it does. It feels like a lot of responsibility to get it right, especially if it's a family member that's passed away.
And I guess you when people first see your work, often that sort of creates a bit of emotion for some people.
Yeah, it does. But that's also quite lovely. Like, it's quite lovely that it can be that meaningful to somebody. Because I think a portrait is quite different to just a photograph.
Definitely. So it's quite intriguing to me how you actually talk with your clients about that idea of, you see yourself as a representational artist, and they may be wanting it to be an absolute perfect replica of the person. So, how do you balance those two ideas?
Well, I think that people know, people when they come to me will know my style. So they sort of know the way that I paint. And I always do strive to get a physical likeness. I think it's important that the person looks, accurate, I guess. But as I said, I like kind of I have a painterly style, or I try to. I don't necessarily want there to be no visible brush strokes or that sort of thing, because I feel like not, I mean, I admire painters who have that style, but for me, if I'm trying to get to that point, it kind of deadens something in the painting. And I feel like it loses the freshness and the direct quality that, would come through otherwise.
So why don't you call yourself a realism painter?
Well, because for me, it's more important that the painting captures something more than just that kind of physical likeness. And I'm just not striving for absolute, that absolute photorealism. So maybe it's not correct to say I'm not a realist painter, but it's certainly not photorealism. I'm not trying to capture every texture in the skin or
And I think you have your style. When you look at all of your portraits, you can tell it's a Judith Milner portrait. So you're bringing something of yourself and your style and your approach. And I think your portraits, to me, have quite a softness about them. I'm not sure if it's the linen or the paint, the colours that you use, but there's a sort of gentleness about what you're conveying somehow.
Yeah. It's interesting that you see it that way. I think sometimes you can't, it's harder to recognise your own style because it's just the way you do things.
Yeah.
But, so it's kind of interesting to hear how other people would describe it.
Yeah. And you do also, do you actually do portraits where you're not using an actual person? Do you find a portrait or a photograph of someone you don't know that you are drawn to and then paint them, or is it always an actual person?
It's generally an actual person, but sometimes I'll see someone that I just I think, I'd love to paint their portrait. So I did two portraits actually of Amanda Branksgrove, who is a model, and she was in a class with me at Brown School of Art. And so I asked her if I could paint her portrait because I just think, there's something about her. She's such a lovely person. She's also very beautiful, and she's had a really interesting life. And I sort of got to know her a little bit through the class. And and so I just asked her if I could paint her portrait. And as I said, most people are really quite, I guess, happy to be asked. And she was amazing. And I went to her house and took a whole bunch of photos of her and painted her. And those portraits are actually in the QMU Art Awards, which you can see online. So
right, oh, that's great. So you were a finalist in those.
Yes.
Well, that's brilliant. Well done. I know the photograph you mean. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Or the paintings that you did, they're really stunning. So you do mainly kind of, for your portraits, mainly head and shoulders and faces, or from the waist up? Do you ever do actual whole bodies?
Figures? No, not really. Unless they're sort of figures in like a scene, So I've done some figurative paintings where there are whole figures.
Right. Yeah. So that leads us on nicely to talking about your figurative work.
Yeah.
So the work that I've seen of yours that is more figurative is it sort of reminds me of my childhood a little bit. There's something about those images that take you back somewhere.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I wanted to sort of I guess stretch myself and try some different things other than just the portraiture. And so I started really kind of going back to old photos, often from, my childhood, and where there were figures sort of family relationships and things like that. So I guess I wanted to look at how I could use painting to convey ideas around some of those other themes, like the relationships between people and connection, And so, yeah, I went back to old photographs, and I love old photographs. I love the sort of faded out colours, and I feel like they're quite different to photographs today. I guess I was a child of the 80s, and my dad took a lot of photographs. So I went back through those, and just when an image would really appeal to me, then I would paint it. And then I started asking other people for old photos and things as well. And so they've been the basis for a lot of my figurative painting.
That's great. So it's mostly been your own photographs and people that you know at this stage.
Mostly, yeah. And then I've sort of started doing some paintings without people in them. I've done some sort of scenes, and I guess they're quite quintessentially New Zealand scenes, more landscape and things like that. But I guess I'm kind of interested in the past and like a slower pace of life and a more carefree time. And so I think that's why I'm kind of drawn to these old photographs.
The childhood of yesteryear.
Yeah.
It seemed a lot simpler, didn't it?
Yeah, especially at the moment, I think, like with COVID and everything else. And it's quite a difficult time, and we've been so isolated. And so, I think I found myself drawn to those images of connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's lots of artists who, in 10 years' time will look back on this time and see that connection that they're making connections, through this time of restrictions. Yeah. That would make a great book, wouldn't it? Looking back on artists' work through COVID.
Yeah,
pandemic.
definitely.
Yeah. And the color palette that you use with the figurative work, it does have that sort of nostalgic feeling of sort of older photos and that kind of thing, or slightly worn out photos sometimes, even just that sort of pinky ready sort of feel about some of them. Is that intentional?
Yeah, that is intentional. I think one of the things that's quite nice with the old photos is they've often lost a lot of colour. So it gives you a lot of license to either put that back in or not, or do your own thing. And sometimes I've worked from black and white photos where I've actually completely made up the colour, which is quite fun. But I guess I always do that, because when I work from photos, I will not necessarily copy them completely. I might change some elements of the composition, or I might change the colours to evoke a certain mood more strongly, because I don't see the point in just copying a photo. I want them to be paintings and to be more expressive. So I will change things, I guess, to heighten the mood or that sort of thing. Yeah,
it's very cool. So would you mind talking us through the process of creating one of those figurative paintings, how you go about it? It'll be interesting also to know where you work and how you sort of set yourself up in your workspace, wherever that is. And then sort of how you would approach a painting right from the beginning through to the end.
So I have a sort of small studio at home, just a room in our house, where I've got my easel and my desk, and I've repurposed my daughter's old change table as my art supply trolley. And so I set myself up in there, and I will, so I spend quite a lot of time, I guess, finding the reference material and choosing a photo, and that takes me quite a long time. And then once I have that, I will sometimes do a couple of different sketches, thinking about what elements I'd want to include or how I might change something. Sometimes it's quite straightforward, and then I will just scale that up onto my canvas. And I don't work on a huge scale, so that's not too difficult. Sort of most of my paintings will be the biggest I will ever really do is maybe 50 by 40 centimetres or thereabouts. So they're not huge.
And is that a space issue, or just you prefer to work smaller?
No, it's just that I kind of prefer to work on that size. Yeah, I haven't ever tried to do anything really large. One day I will. I'll definitely give it a go. But and then I paint quite directly, so I don't work in loads and loads of layers. I tend to have more of a direct style where I paint and I try and keep that freshness. So they call it alla prima, which means wet to wet, and it's meant to be done in one session, which I wouldn't usually achieve that. But I will usually work for a couple of, the best part of a day on something, and then I'll go back to it the next day while it's still wet and work on it again. And often things will require me to go back more, and do further sessions on them. But I do try and get as much as I can done in those first 2 days while the paint's wet. And try. I don't know. I just feel like there's something really fresh, and when you come back to something, I don't like to labour things too much, or that can be lost.
That's interesting. You just have one work at a time?
No, I do have a couple of things on the go often, but I'll sort of work on something, as I say, usually two really good sessions on something, and then I might put it aside for a while, work on something else, and then come back to it to do more of the fine tuning. But I do try and just really get the bulk of something done in 1 or 2 sessions.
Wow. So you must be quite efficient.
Yeah, reasonably. But I guess again they're not huge scale works, so you can cover your canvas quite quickly. And I've got much faster than I used to be such a slow painter at high school and things. But I have I've really got faster as I've been doing it more, I guess.
Well, they're really beautiful, and I'll put all of those paintings on your blog post so people can have a look while they're listening, just so that they can get a feel for it. And it might be interesting also to put a couple of your landscape paintings out there. Are they things that you're actually putting out into the public, or are you just starting off with those?
I've been putting those out there. I have done a couple of paintings of caravans in New Zealand beaches and things, which I guess again it's probably this COVID thing and not being able to have a holiday, but I've just found myself really drawn to those images, and they've been really popular. I've done 3, I think, and they all sold straight away. And great. So I just recently got a couple of the images digitized and have offered them as limited edition prints. So we'll see how that goes.
That's a good idea. I think they'll go really nicely as prints as well.
Yeah, and it is nice to paint something different, because, as I said, doing the portraits, I love it, but it can be quite a lot of pressure and responsibility, and so sometimes it's nice just to paint something else.
I can imagine. And the caravans, is there anything, and apart from the sort of fantasizing about being on holiday out of Auckland, is there anything else about the caravans that come from somewhere?
No, we never had a caravan, but I think they just sort of tied in with the that idea of kind of carefree summers and summer holidays, and I've done a couple of commissions of people's batches as well. So they're all these slightly different things, but they kind of all have something in common, I think.
And they've still got that sort of element of nostalgia, I guess. Yeah. So they all kind of it feels like all of your work kind of comes within, under one umbrella in ways,
Yeah, I think there's definitely a connection that kind of runs through there.
Which is nice. So I'm just talking about the commercial side of your art practice. Um, I know you have your website, and all the links again will be on the blog post. But how do you actually reach out to people? How do you find these people that want you to make a commission for them? And how do you sell your work?
Yeah, so the commissions have tended to be word of mouth, really. People will see one of my portraits in somebody's house, and then they'll, I guess, get in touch and say, oh, I saw a portrait that you did, and would you do one for me? And so, yeah, that's mainly been word of mouth, because I'm quite new to all of this, and I've only really started selling my work, this year. Prior to that, I would really only be doing things for friends.
Which is amazing. I mean, you've come a long way just within 1 year of selling work.
Yeah, no, it does. It's been really interesting, because I never really thought that. I thought portraiture it's not a very commercial or easy to sell proposition. People won't buy portraits of people they don't know. Whereas you paint a landscape, and that can appeal to a lot of different people. So, I was never really trying to do it as a commercial thing. But then I found that there were people that wanted portraits painted. So that's been really nice. Yeah.
That's lovely. It's really affirming, isn't it? It's all
Yeah.
quite new. Your practice is quite new, really.
Yeah.
Relatively new.
Yeah.
That's great. And so you were saying that you are starting to do limited edition prints.
Yeah.
Are you going to do that with like your figurative painting and your landscape paintings, sort of in general, or?
Well, it was kind of just something that I thought I would try, because a couple of people had contacted me and said, "Oh, I loved your caravan painting, but I see it's sold. Do you have any more?" And I didn't, but I thought, well, that's something I could potentially try, doing some prints. So I had some digitized, a week ago, and I'm just going to see how that goes, really. And if people, if there's a demand for them, or what happens.
That's great.
It's a bit of an experiment.
Test the waters, yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll sell mostly through your website or on Instagram as well?
Yeah, I've had people DM me on Instagram, and otherwise through my website. And then recently I've entered into quite a few shows, like awards and things like that, like the QMU Art Awards and the Walker and Hall Art Awards. So I'll have opportunities, hopefully, to exhibit and sell work through some of those exhibitions, if they're not cancelled with COVID.
Yeah, it's so sad, isn't it? There's so many exhibitions being cancelled. Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah.
So many events, especially in the arts,
Yeah.
But how do you find competitions? I mean, I have never entered a competition. That kind of scares me. How do you find, what is it about competitions that you enjoy?
Well, I'd never entered a competition either until I went to a workshop at Brown, and one of the tutors said to our class, "Oh, if anyone's got anything, the Walker and Hall Art Awards closes on Monday." This tutor had been a finalist in that before, or won the award, I'm not sure, but and she was encouraging us to put something in. So I went home and I had a look what work I had, and I thought, oh, well, I'll enter something. And it was very, I hadn't planned to submit anything or anything like that, but and I put a piece of work in, and then I found out that I was selected as a finalist. So that was, I was just so surprised and happy to get that experience. And so then I thought, oh, well, maybe I should enter a few more of these things. So I did, and I was selected for the QMU Art Awards and the Hawke's Bay Art Awards as well. So that's been
great. Yeah.
really quite affirming, I guess, because
Yeah,
the exhibitions
it's
and
encouraging. And how do you think you
yeah.
feel if you weren't selected or you didn't become a finalist, or how do you think that would affect your practice?
Um, I think, well, I certainly didn't have any expectations that I would be selected. It was, quite a surprise. So I don't think it would affect me too much. I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing.
Mm.
And
Yeah, and I guess you see, people who enter art award sort of events. It's almost like it's actually an exhibition, really, where you can show your
yeah,
work, and then there is a sort of competition side of it. But I guess it's just, you know, a way of putting your work out to maybe a different audience, and a good experience, for people
yeah,
who are listening who've never entered a competition before. I guess there's good things about it because it gives you another forum,
yeah, yeah.
and the one you just got to get your head around if you don't win,
Yeah, yeah. But
and
as you
not
say,
get depressed.
it's more about, being in
Yeah,
the exhibition and having another opportunity to show your work. And that's
yeah,
exciting. And yeah.
yeah. That's great. And have you actually, apart from the Brown School of Art exhibition at the end of the year, have you had any of your own exhibitions or been involved in other group exhibitions?
Um, Only the Women's Fund event. And then I'm a member with a couple of different organisations now. So the Mairangi Arts Centre, I've got a work in their members exhibition that's coming up. And I have submitted an exhibition proposal to a gallery quite recently, so I'm still waiting to hear back. So I won't say too much about that, but
Yeah.
I'd love to have a show in the next year or so, like a
Mm.
solo show. Yeah,
And the community galleries are great for that kind of
yeah,
thing, aren't they? For the solo shows and the group shows. It's a
yeah,
really good way to start, I think.
yeah.
Yeah. And have you got sort of ideas of maybe being represented by a particular gallery in the future?
No, I haven't. I haven't really. Have quite. I mean, I quite enjoy like selling my work directly and having that contact with people. And I think certainly for portrait commissions, it just seems to make sense that you would have more of a direct relationship. But then for the figurative work, um, I guess having a gallery representation could be good, but it's all quite new, so I haven't really given it a huge amount of thought. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, it's probably something that will happen at some point.
yeah. Touch wood.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can imagine it. And tell us about the Brown School of Art 1 year course.
Yeah. So I went to Brown School of Art when my daughter was little. I did a couple of their short courses. They have weekend workshops and things like that, and I'd done a couple of short courses and really enjoyed those. And then when I think it was 2019, I enrolled in one of their year-long courses. So they have year-long paintings 1 through 4, and I went in and started at year 2 because I already had some experience. And they're really good. It's once a week, and I like that regular opportunity to get feedback on my work and things like that. And it's just really lovely to have a creative community around and other
Yeah.
people who are also have similar goals and want to talk about art and go to
Mm.
exhibitions together and things like
Oh,
that.
yeah. It'd be so great. It's such
Yeah,
a great thing on so many levels, isn't it?
yeah. No, it's a really
And
great school.
do they guide you just within your own practice, or are you sort of challenged to try different things within the course?
I think in the sort of year 1, which I didn't do, and the year 2, they get you to try different things, and then as you kind of progress through, you're more self-directed, but they get you to do where you do have like group discussions and things like that, and you get that support and the feedback on your work, which is really great. Yeah.
That sounds so good.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It sounds an amazing course. It's just it sort of can work around your family commitments. But, it's not that sort of whole full-time, full-on uni kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's still lots of learning and just getting you going with your practice and keeping you disciplined, I guess, to keep painting.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's very hard for people to commit to going back to art school or something full-time, I think, once you've got other things going on, children or work.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, I'll put a link to Brown School of Art in your blog post as well. So I'd be interested to know if you call yourself an artist now or a lawyer or a bit of both, or.
I'm. It's been funny actually because my children keep telling everyone I'm an artist, and I think I definitely would have felt really, really strange about that in the past because I didn't go to art school and don't have a fine arts degree and things. But I think recently it feels a bit more legitimate because I have been selling a lot of work, and that's been great. It's kind of great, and it's what I want to do. So I suppose I'm getting a little bit more comfortable calling myself a painter. And as I said, it's sort of, I hadn't been kind of ready to say that I wouldn't go back to law until recently, but I think that's just gradually I've come to that realization too. So, I mean, I'm still, I still do identify as a lawyer to some degree, like it was a big part of my life. And I had some really good experiences doing that as well. So, I think it will always be part of my story and what I've done. Yeah.
And I wonder, do you think it's, your experience as a lawyer, how do you think that's informed your art practice, or has it?
Probably hasn't informed my art practice, but I've been working on a series called Raising the Bar, and I've been painting some woman lawyers who have been, doing great, like really great work. And I guess that came about in response to, the media's called out the sexual harassment and bullying and discrimination in the legal profession recently. And I can certainly relate to some of that, and I worked in the big firms and I know what the culture is like, and I wanted to paint women who are kind of working to affect change in the legal profession. So I think also you go into a courtroom or a boardroom and there were often portraits of white male judges or partners and things. And it's just implicitly sending this message that that's the type of person that will succeed in the profession. And I wanted to paint these other women as role models, I guess, for younger generations coming through. So that's kind of something I've been working on.
That's so good. And it just feels even more authentic that you've actually come from that world and have experienced it. So, that's part of your story, which really resonates with the work you're doing.
Yeah, I felt like it was just a kind of a way of processing all of that in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you'll be helping, the next generation of female lawyers with that kind of thing. If you get your work out there, that's a great role model.
Yeah. Because I feel like, there are certain groups of women lawyers who probably are very underrepresented, and and I think it's important that especially, you know, women of different ethnicities, non-Pākehā women, they're really underrepresented in law and at law school. And and I think it's important to showcase those women that are achieving, because there are some really amazing people out there doing great work. Yeah.
And again, doing that kind of work for you is, you know, doing the research and making connections with the people and telling their stories through your work. And, you know, that seems to be a big part of your practice and how you approach what you do.
Yeah.
Which is great. So, Judith, we'll just start finishing off here. Sadly, I feel like I could talk to you all day. What is it that actually, I mean, obviously you've spoken about the people who inspire you and that kind of thing. Is there something else that inspires you to be doing the work that you're doing?
I just feel really lucky to have a way of expressing myself, and I think I love the idea of creating something lasting, and creating something. I think one thing I used to say when I was a lawyer was, sometimes I wish my job had a more tangible result, you know, and and I think actually making a physical product is really satisfying. So that's kind of part of it. And just being able to, I guess, express myself, I guess, through painting. Sometimes you can say something that's harder to put into words, or it's just feel really lucky to have this ability, I guess. And
It's so good. And a painting is such a sort of living legacy, isn't it, in a lot of ways, that sort of goes on, you know, from generation to generation potentially.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Yeah. Especially when you're painting people, I think there's something about that, you know, becomes probably quite a family treasure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Which is, as we said, you know, such a privilege.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So I ask my guests this question every time. Do you have any advice for people who are starting out on their creative journey, or maybe also specifically mums who are trying to kind of juggle their creativity with looking after children?
I think a couple of things I would say. Don't wait until you're ready, because I often hear people saying, "Oh yeah, one day I'd like to put a website together or something, but I'm not there yet." And I kind of think you just have to do it. You just have to put yourself out there. I wasn't very comfortable when I first put myself out there, but it's been so affirming, because people have just been so encouraging, and I've had people message me and say, "Oh, I think it's so great that you're doing what you love." And I've never had anyone say anything negative, which has been really lovely. And I think, it's really important as a mum. You give so much of yourself, and it's really important to make time for yourself and to do something that, you know, fills you up as well. And so, I think making sure that you can find time to do something for yourself. And sometimes you have to maybe change the way that you're working a little bit when your kids are small, but to fit in with that. But I think if you can make some time for yourself, and it's really an important thing to do. Yeah,
I agree. Absolutely. And what do you think is in the future for you? I feel like there's big things in the future for you, but how do you see it?
I'm excited to kind of keep developing and trying some new things. I feel like it's, you know, I'm just getting started on this journey. And I think, as I said, one day I'd love to have publish a book of my portraits. That would be an amazing kind of long-term goal. So, and then I'm looking forward to next year. I think, you know, my daughter's starting school and having a bit more time as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I can't wait to see all the amazing things that you get up to, Jude. And it's been lovely to meet you. And it's even more special at the moment in lockdown to actually have a conversation with somebody and make a new connection. You know, it's lovely to meet you, and I really do love your work. And it's been so interesting to hear your story from being in the law area to the visual arts area, and I think your story will be really inspirational. So thank you so much for coming.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for asking me. It's been really lovely to chat.
Yeah, thanks, Jude.